Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Spirit of Texas Author Spotlight. I'm Lauren Scott, Chair of the Spirit of Texas Reading List Committee. In this episode, we are excited to welcome Spirit of Texas 2024 honoree, Kalynn Bayron, author of the middle grade series, The Vanquishers. Joining us for this interview is Spot Committee member Brooke Glazner. Brooke Glazner is a Texas A&M graduate who went on to receive her Master's of Library Science from Texas Woman's University. She's been in public libraries since March of 2020, so her experience has been interesting to say the least. This is her first year on the Spot Committee and her second as a young adult librarian in Montgomery County. When she finally pulls her nose out of a book, she is kept company by her husband and pride of fur babies.
Thank you, Lauren.
Um,
Hi, everyone. Let me introduce our fabulous author today. Kalynn Bayron is the New York Times bestselling author of young adult novels Cinderella is Dead and You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, as well as the middle grade series The Vanquishers. She's a classically trained vocalist who grew up in Anchorage, Alaska, but currently resides with her family in Ithaca, New York. When she's not writing, you can find her listening to Ella Fitzgerald on loop, attending the theater, watching scary movies, and spending time with her kids. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here. So, for our readers who may not have had the chance to read The Vanquishers and Secret of the Reaping, can you tell us a little bit about these books?
Yeah, of course. So The Vanquishers is my first kind of foray into middle grade. I love writing for younger readers. So The Vanquishers is a vampire story because I love vampire stories myself. Um, but The Vanquishers is a series that focuses on a group of friends who are living in San Antonio, which is where I was living when I wrote the first Vanquishers book. And they live in a world where vampires were known to have existed, but were wiped out by a group of masked vampire slayers known as the Vanquishers. Um, my main character, Malika, her friends all call her Boog, is 12 years old, and she is navigating middle school with her best friends, Cedric and Jules, when they get a new student in their class, and his name is Aaron. And they all become really close friends, and they're kind of palling around together when Aaron goes missing. So after Aaron goes missing, Boog is absolutely convinced that a vampire was involved somehow. And throughout the course of the series, we see this friend group kind of uncover these earth-shattering mysteries about vampires and vampire slayers and about the vanquishers. And it really is a story that focuses on friendship and things that kind of go bump in the night.
Okay, so you came from a musical background. What led you to writing?
Yeah, so I studied classical vocal performance in college, and I'm a musical theater stan. I absolutely love musical theater and opera, and so I think the commonality there is that they're all forms of storytelling. I think musical theater and opera are incredible mediums for storytelling. So it wasn't a huge jump to go into novel writing. I use a lot of the same concepts in novel writing that I did when I was working in the music space, character development, plotting, conflict, all of those things. So it wasn't a huge leap. And I tend to think of my work, my novel work, in very musical terms. I'm a very kind of as I'm listening to the story, I need to hear the way it sounds to make sure the rhythm is right, the rhythm of the storytelling. So it still is very, very present in my work. My characters are almost always referencing some type of music or musical theater. And so I have found a way to make those things kind of combine, and that's really fun for me.
I'd never thought about it that way, but there is absolutely a storytelling.
Makes sense, right? Yeah.
Yes. Now, The Vanquishers is your first foray into the middle grade space. What was your inspiration for writing for this new audience, and how has writing this book how is that different than writing for young adults?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, I just really love writing for young readers. My debut novel was a YA, and I've written a lot of YA, but I I focused a lot of in my YA work. I focused a lot on kind of mythology and retellings and fairy
Mhm.
tales, and I love all of those things. But I also really love a good vampire story, kind of like I was saying. And I thought about, these kind of vampire stories that I had access to when I was younger, which were for older audiences. Um, a lot of Anne Rice, things like that. And so I wanted to write a vampire story that was specifically for younger readers. And one of the things that a highlight of my job is that I get to go around and talk to young people in person, and they are always telling me how much they want more scary stories. They want vampires and werewolves and paranormal and ghosts, and they love it. They absolutely love it. It's probably why things like Goosebumps continue to be such a huge thing for young readers. So I wanted to write a story that was for this younger audience, but that still felt um, like a big, impactful story. Because one thing for certain is that young readers do not want to feel like you're talking down to them. They don't want you to dumb anything down for them. They want the emotion and the scares, but they want it on their level. And so that's what I tried to do with the Vanquishers, and that was my biggest inspiration, was just the young readers. I know they love these stories, and I love them too. So it's nice.
Goosebumps really has been around for a while. And
It
it was
really has.
a
It really
TV
has. There's
show.
so many.
Well, I know you only have two so far, but maybe this is the next Goosebumps.
You never know. You never know.
So all of your books have a dark element to them. I mean, with a title like Cinderella is Dead, that's
Yeah.
not necessarily bright and sunshine. Do you prefer stories with the realism of struggle instead of the happily ever after?
You know, I I do love a really kind of haunting, dark type of story, but I also read a lot of romance. Like I really love a happily ever after. I really, really do. And people are always asking me, what are you going to try next? What are you going to write next? I would love to write a romance, but I don't know that I have the skill to do that. I love those stories. But kind of going back to your question, I do have a lot of really kind of dark themes in my work. And I think I also have some happy endings there, but we go through a lot to get there. We go through a lot to kind of earn that happy ending. And so I think I can have both. I think I can do both. And I think a story with high conflict kind of plot points, and really low lows can be engaging if you maintain that element of hope, especially there as we're kind of wrapping things up at the end. I think that's really important. I try to keep that in mind when I'm writing for younger readers, that even though a lot of my stories tend to be very dark, um, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. There's kind of a this hope that we're working towards in the end. I think that's key when you're writing for younger readers.
I agree. You always want to have that, even if it's just a small glimmer of hope. Otherwise, it's just sad.
Yeah.
So where did you come up with the idea of the sailor's knot? Is this similar to something else in history?
So I have this group of vampire slayers that all have these kind of unique abilities, and I knew I was going to write this vampire story, and I know that a lot of people are familiar with, vampires can't go out in the daytime, and they have an aversion to garlic and silver. Those are kind of, I feel like a lot of people know about those things, but there are so many other things that vampires um, are uh, frightened by. I did a lot of research for this story just to kind of read about vampire myths from all over the world. And one of the things that I ran into was this thought that vampires are have an aversion to knots. So if you there's this kind of folk tale that if you throw a knotted rope in front of a vampire, it will stop and it will have a compulsion to untie all of these knots before it can come after you. So you might have a chance to get away. I thought that was really fascinating because here's this kind of like undead creature, but it's, it has to like stop and untie knots. That just seemed kind of it seemed a little funny to me, but I thought I could use it in the story, as and it kind of, Sailor's Knot is a vanquisher, and he uses a silver infused rope as his weapon of choice, and so that was kind of my inspiration for him and that character and what he does. But I found a lot of really interesting vampire slaying facts as I was kind of doing research for this novel, so that was fun.
I can actually understand the you pass by something, but let me just fix it.
Right,
Let me
and
just fix that right there.
they also apparently have to, like, if you throw a handful of rice on the ground in front of them, they have to stop and count every grain of rice. So I was like, what is going on here? But I was able to work that into the story as well. So I think that's it's just so much fun to write these types of stories and do the research and tie it all together.
Mm. Well, obviously, you have drawn inspiration from myths from around the world and TV shows, comics. What is an element that was inspired by one of these that readers may miss or that you would love to highlight?
Yeah, I did take a lot of inspiration from vampire shows and movies. Like I said, I'm a big fan of vampire stories in general. Um, I think Mr. Rupert is my ode to Buffy the Vampire Slayer. That's kind of a little Easter egg there. There are nods to Dracula, of course, and the vampires of the Underworld franchise. And so I love leaving little kind of Easter eggs throughout the story. And in book 3, which comes out in October, there's a lot more of that. There's a lot more Easter eggs, a lot more kind of tributes to all of the vampires of the past. So yeah, so more clues. And book 3 is a big step up from book 2. So so yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how my readers pick apart those little clues and find those Easter eggs.
Yeah, I heard yesterday, I think it was announced yesterday that book 3 was
Yeah.
coming out, and I'm so excited.
Yeah.
So all of your books feature diverse, inclusive casts of characters. Knowing the climate we are currently in, especially in the South, why do you think continuing to write these stories is important? And what advice would you give other writers, artists, people in general, as they put their own diverse content out there?
Yeah, I every young reader deserves to see themselves reflected on the page. And when it comes to depictions of kind of Black and queer characters, BIPOC characters, those depictions do not always have to center our pain and our trauma. There's a time and place for those types of stories, absolutely. Um, but there's room for stories that center these same exact characters getting to solve mysteries and be dragon slayers and fighting vampires. And we deserve stories that allow us to imagine what could be, what we could be. And I would encourage anyone who is writing with marginalized communities in mind to keep going. The road is, it can be dark and long, but we in doing the work, it is worth every step along the way, because your story is going to give a young reader another opportunity to see themselves, maybe for the first time, maybe in a different way that they haven't seen themselves before. So my advice is to keep going, because the journey is worth it, and the readers deserve more. So keep going, and in community, we will all be in community together. Our stories will be part of a larger conversation that we're having about inclusivity and diversity in children's literature. And I think that benefits all of us.
I agree.
Mhm.
So we do have a few questions that readers have given us. Obviously, we know there's going to be a third book, but do you see there being books beyond that, or is this just going to be a trilogy?
So for right now, it's a trilogy, but I have kind of left the door open a little bit, so that if if readers really are loving the story, and there's a possibility for more. So right now it's a trilogy, but I always like to kind of keep the door open just a little, because the readers really dictate if there will be more books. Because if they want more, I would love to give that to them.
Okay, so if you were a vanquisher in training, what would your name and power be?
Oh man. Oh man, that's a tough question. I don't think I would fare very well as a vampire slayer, like, at all. I think I would be the person who I would be kind of like Mr. Rupert. I would be kind of like the record keeper, the researcher. I would not have a cool name, or it would be something like, the the book nerd or something like that. Like, I wouldn't be involved in any of the exciting stuff. I'm gonna go over here and just do research and keep track of everything that's going on. That would be my job. That would be my contribution to the Vanquishers.
I mean, as a
Yeah,
librarian, that's that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's
you get it.
probably what I
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
So, since these are for middle grade, what are some of your favorite middle grade books from, I mean, now or when you were in middle grade?
Um, Gosh, I'm trying to think. I think maybe one of the first books from middle school. I know we read Tuck Everlasting. I know that that was a big thing when I was younger. A lot of Beverly Cleary novels. I read a ton of Nancy Drew, which was even kind of old school even when I was younger. But that's kind of what I had. The Hardy Boys. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was high on my list. But there's a lot of really wonderful middle grade out now. I think Amari and the Night Brothers is one of my favorite kind of more contemporary stories. Um, yeah, middle grade space. Oh, and Witchlings by Clarabelle Ortega is also fabulous. So I love middle grade. It's such a fun space to be in.
And I have one final question that's very important, and I think everybody wants to know. In the books, only people with a certain blood type can become a vampire. So, what blood type are you?
I do not have anything to worry about, because well, maybe I have something to worry about. I don't have to worry about being turned into a vampire
Oh,
at all. So I'm A positive. So
me too.
yeah, so we're safe. We're good. Well,
Whew.
maybe it's not safe, but we're not going to be turned
Yeah.
into vampires, which I don't want any parts of that. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with us today. Um,
Yes, of course.
I really did love the books. I brought my copies.
Oh,
They are
wonderful.
blurred because of the
Yeah.
background, but they were absolutely delightful to read. And thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for reading and for having me. I really appreciate it.
Before we close out, Kalynn, do you want to tell us a little bit about the third Vanquishers book? Because I know it was just announced yesterday. Can you tell us anything about it?
Yeah, so this is kind of wrapping up the trilogy, but like I said, there's a little bit of leeway there at the end. But this is Boog and Cedric and Jules and Aaron kind of facing the biggest threat that they have come across thus far. And it is more scares, more vampires, bigger adventures, new places, new people. And I think the readers will really enjoy it. I'm thrilled that it's coming out so soon. I'm very excited. The cover just came out. The kids are looking fabulous on that cover. Every time I see them, it's like seeing they get a little more confident in their abilities, and they are officially the wrecking crew now. So it's a fun, um, slightly scary new adventure. I'm very excited.
What is the title of it?
It's called The Vanquishers: Rise of the Wrecking Crew.
Rise of the Wrecking Crew. I love that.
Yes.
We're so excited for that third installment. We're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun. Thank you for joining us today for our Spirit of Texas Author Spotlight with Kalynn Bayron. Be sure to check out our Spirit of Texas website. We have book club activities, read-alikes, and more for the Vanquisher series and for all of our 2024 Spirit of Texas books and authors. Stay tuned for our next episode of the Spotlight, which will be coming soon to our Texas Library Association Young Adult Roundtable YouTube channel and to our Spirit of Texas website. And just thank you again, Kalynn and Brooke, for our time together today. This was such a fun conversation.
Thank you.